Hey everyone, my name is Wes, and welcome back to another episode of Terror Talk where I discuss creepy clips online. I created this original horror music to add to the video, and I hope you enjoy it. Be sure to leave your own comments, and when you're done watching, check the description if you'd like to listen to my music without the commentary. Now let's get into it and have some fun.
Every Easter, my entire extended family takes the trip out to my Uncle John's house, who lives way out in the sticks. This past year was no different. Uncle John lives in a huge house that sits on a wide open stretch of land, which is surrounded by woods on all sides. Even though I've been there before, many times actually, I've never actually wandered out in the woods behind his house before. I'm not much of a nature person, so I've never had much of an interest in the outdoors. I was dreading the trip, to tell you the truth. I've never really related much to that side of my family. They're all super outdoorsy, into hunting and fishing and stuff like that. And most of them have lived in the same place their whole lives. Anytime I'm around them, I feel kind of like the odd one out.
Do you have a family like that? Where they're big into nature and outdoors and all that kind of stuff? And do you feel like the odd one out? And maybe not just for that reason, but in general, do you feel like the odd one out in your family? Because for me, sometimes, even though I do get along and I'm relatively close with my family, and relatively, I say that loosely, but it's like sometimes I do feel the odd one out, like the black sheep, because I am like so different from them. And it's just kind of crazy how different I feel sometimes from that. And that's not necessarily a bad thing. Like, it's not good to be like everyone else. But let me know if you have any experiences like that or any creepy experiences related to family or outdoors, nature, anything like that, because I love hearing those types of scary stories in the comments below.
On top of that, most of my cousins are way older than me, like already married with kids or working on some kind of farm. The only one even remotely close to my age is Kevin. He's a couple years older than me and actually pretty chill. We always end up sticking together during these family trips just by default. He knows I don't really fit in with the rest of them, so he's usually good about keeping me company without making it weird. Anyway, we made the drive to Uncle John's late Friday night. I'm an only child, so it was just my parents and I in the car. I was exhausted from the drive, so I went to bed almost immediately. The next morning, Kevin and I spent a couple hours in Uncle John's basement playing pool table. Neither of us was any good, but it was better than sitting around upstairs. The house was already packed with relatives by then. You know what the usual holiday chaos is like. We mostly stayed downstairs, low key avoiding it all. There wasn't a TV down there, so
Yeah, kind of off topic, but I can definitely relate to that kind of, wanting to avoid all the family interactions, especially if you have like a massive family. It, it can be nice. It is nice seeing family, I'm not going to lie, but it gets tiring after a while. So I definitely feel the vibe of just hanging out and just like, keeping things low key like that.
Kevin played some music off his phone. The two of us talked about some dumb family drama, not even worth mentioning here. While we played, Kevin kept going on about the woods behind Uncle John's house. He said they stretched out for miles and that hardly anyone ever went far enough to see the cool stuff out there. He talked about how magical it felt and how beautiful the isolation was. I mostly just nodded along. Nature talk wasn't really my thing, but he clearly loved it. I'm not sure how, but later that day, Kevin convinced me to go on a nature walk with him. Like I said, I'm not a nature person by any means, but I was quite literally dying of boredom, which is probably why I agreed to tag along. We obviously told Uncle John where we were going. He's a really nice guy and always lets us younger people do what we want, a mentality I wish my own parents shared. Kevin took the lead once we got outside, cutting across the backyard and into the tree line like he'd done it 100 times before, which, knowing him, he probably had. The woods were thick, but not totally wild. There was a kind of natural path that Kevin was following. It wasn't late in the day, so I wasn't super worried about the sun setting. But But the deeper we went, the more I started to wonder how we were going to find our way back. After about 20 minutes of walking, I asked Kevin if he was sure he knew where we were, and he just laughed. He told me he knew these woods like the back of his hand, and that he'd been exploring them since he was a kid. We'd been walking for maybe another 20 minutes when we both stopped at the same time. From somewhere up ahead, we heard this loud thunk, like something heavy slamming into wood. It didn't sound like an animal or someone stepping on a branch. It was reoccurring, like a pause, then another hit, then another pause, and another hit. It sounded like a hammer or mallet being driven against a tree.
What would you think, or what would you do if you came across something like this? Would you keep going and explore, or would you head back? A part of me would be very curious to keep going, but a part of me would be like, I'm not sure about this. It sounds like it could be something creepy, but maybe not. But yeah, let me know what you would do because I'm curious. And I don't even know what I would do, but a part of me would definitely want to keep going, I think.
That's the best way I can describe it. Kevin looked at me, and I could tell he was trying to figure it out too. That sound didn't sound too close, but it was loud enough to be clear. He told me it wasn't out of the realm of possibility that a hunter was wandering around in there. But even so, he definitely looked a little startled. Eventually, the sound stopped. I asked if he wanted to turn back, but he shook his head. I could tell he was curious now, and I'll admit I was kind of too. So we kept walking the direction we thought the sound had come from, both on high alert. We'd only been walking for a few more minutes when Kevin suddenly stopped and held his arm out in front of me. I froze, thinking maybe he'd seen someone in front of us, but then he pointed up into the trees. At first, I didn't understand what I was seeing, but then it hit me. There were three upside down crosses nailed into three adjacent trees, way higher up than anyone could have reached without a ladder, easily 15, maybe 20 feet off the ground. Before we could even turn to leave, I saw movement out of the corner of my eye. I whipped my head around, and to my horror, there was a person standing there. He was dressed like a lumberjack, with a thick beard and a very dark stare. Kevin stepped in front of me, partially shielding me from the guy's view. He stared at me specifically and said, "You shouldn't be here." Kevin immediately apologized to the guy and told him we were just leaving, which is actually what we did. That guy didn't move as we left. He just stared us down as we walked back the way we had come.
That's pretty weird, isn't it? Like, that would be unsettling to see some lumberjack dude and all those crosses up in the trees. Like, that's really, really weird.
I could feel my hands shaking. We walked back the whole way in silence, and I've never experienced a more tense moment in my life. The two of us kept turning around, trying to make sure we weren't being followed, but there was no way to tell for sure. When we finally made it back to the house, we told Uncle John first thing. Like I said, he's a friendly guy and he knows all his neighbors, so I got a sick feeling in my stomach when he said no one he knew matched our description of the guy in the woods. He asked us a bunch of times if we had been followed, and we told him no. There wasn't much else for any of us to do. Someone floated the idea of arming up and sweeping the woods, but Uncle John wanted to avoid confrontation and didn't want to lead anyone to his house. So Kevin and I went back downstairs to chill, and the rest of our relatives went back to whatever they'd been doing.
That's actually pretty smart of the uncle to do that because, that probably would have just led someone back to the house if they went out there and tried to search for whoever was out there. That could have led to unnecessary drama or conflict, and definitely leading someone back to their house. So I admire the uncle for making that decision.
Likely planning for the Easter festivities. That whole encounter messed with my head way more than I let on. I ended up going to bed pretty early that night, just to get my mind off of it. But because of that, I woke up way earlier than usual. Like, way earlier. I rolled over, checked my phone, and saw that it was just after 5 a.m. The sun had just barely started poking over the horizon, but it was still mostly dark out. I tried to go back to sleep, but I couldn't. So I just decided to get an early start to my day. Uncle John has a study on the third floor of his house, so I decided to go up there and see if there were any interesting books to read. Uncle John's study has this big old window that overlooks the entire backyard. As I walked past it, something caught my eye. There was a very faint, flickering glow coming from the edge of the woods. It looked like the pulsing light of a small fire, not a flashlight or anything that bright. I stood there for a good 30 seconds just staring at it, trying to make sense of what I was seeing. Curiosity got the better of me, and I needed to know what I was looking at. So I went downstairs and stepped out onto the back deck. When I realized what I was looking at, I had to literally fight back a scream. There were at least 3 figures standing just past the edge of the woods, each holding a small torch. They weren't walking or moving around. They were just standing there, facing the house, facing me. I ran straight to Uncle John's room and woke him up, telling him what I saw. Without any questions, he grabbed his rifle, threw on a pair of pants, and told me to stay inside. He marched out onto the back deck and scanned the yard while I watched from the doorway. By that time, though, those people had retreated back into the woods. Without hesitation, he aimed his rifle up into the air and fired it 3 times. That woke up the whole house, and the next 20 minutes or so was complete chaos. I'll just tell you that I can't think of a worse way to spend an Easter morning. The whole holiday was kind of ruined after that, and everyone was on edge for the entire day. Eventually, it came time for my parents and I to leave, and I can't say I was upset about it. This was like 9 months ago, and Uncle John has since told us that he hasn't seen or experienced anything strange. Still, though, I would hate to be living in that house, knowing there are psychos lurking somewhere nearby. I'll send an update should Uncle John tell us anything of note.
Yeah, that almost kind of sounds like the movie The Strangers, doesn't it? Like having 3 people out there lurking in the woods like that, out having this not abandoned, but kind of a house out in a very remote location like this. And yeah, that it sounds a lot like The Strangers to me, and of course they weren't wearing masks like the people in The Strangers wear masks. But yeah, it is definitely a creepy story, nonetheless. And you just never know what's lurking out in the woods. I know I've said it before, but you really just don't know. And I think that's what makes the woods so creepy and mysterious and beautiful all at the same time, is that the woods really are a beautiful place, but oftentimes the woods are so remote and just kind of hidden off from the rest of the world that you really never know what's in there, do you? Like, there's a lot of crazy stuff that could be lurking in the woods, and most of the time it's nothing, but not always most of the time, because there are some instances where there really are a lot of creepy things that happen out there in the woods. So I definitely thought this was a creepy story, and it just goes to show you that you always have to kind of be vigilant and just have your wits about you, especially if you hear a weird sound or if there's anything off out in a remote location like that. Just kind of have your wits about you and be careful. But yeah, I thought this was a creepy story for sure, and I hope you enjoyed my commentary. And be sure to check out my money saving opportunity in the link below. And I will see you in the next video.